again. As promised, we're going to get into this Anthony Martial story. Now, Mark, why is he going to see out his contract to start with?
Well, it feels like we've been speaking about Anthony Martial in a number of windows over the last few years, doesn't it? And you got the feeling that a few days ago there might be movement because there was some interest in the player from both Marseille, Fenerbahce and the Saudi Pro League. So there were options. The reason why there were options because he's entering the last 6 months of his Manchester United contract. So essentially he can go wherever he wants in the summer as a free. However, like Manchester United do with so many of the stars that they sign, they insert a year option into their deal. Now, generally, that's to protect the value of the player and gives Manchester United that little bit more power when it gets to the latter stages of the contract where they can say, well, actually, you're not going anywhere because we're going to extend the contract by a year and therefore they can get more money. Obviously, Anthony Martial's situation is slightly different. He's decided he wants to stay at Manchester United, continue to play for that man, Erik ten Hag, fight for his place and see out the remainder of his contract and then decide upon his future in the summer. So it'll be interesting to see, A, how much game time he gets, how well he plays, and just how things develop. But yeah, options on the table at one stage, not interested. He wants to stay, take his money, and see what options he has in the summer.
So, Dharmesh, you've sat there over countless transfer windows and said to me, look, you know, just as Mark alluded to, clubs extend contracts, keep the value of the player. Why are Manchester United not doing that with Anthony Martial?
Well, if you remember, Erik ten Hag in his news conference last week said that 3 of the players Manchester United had triggered the options in Victor Lindelof, Hannibal Mejbri and Aaron Wan-Bissaka. And he also said that they're in talks with Raphael Varane and Anthony Martial. Now, a lot of people were a bit sceptical, thinking, does that mean that they're going to extend Martial's contract? They're 2 different situations. Varane, I think they see a long-term future for him at United, but not on the current terms, hence why they haven't extended that. With Anthony Martial, as it stands, they're not triggering that 1-year option because they don't want to extend on the current terms, number one. But also, if they were to receive offers in January, they would consider those offers. That's one of the reasons they haven't extended that 1-year option. Now, some people could say, well, why don't they extend that option now? But that would still be on the current terms if Manchester United don't want to pay. And who's to say that Anthony Martial would stay on for that contract and then spend another year at Manchester United and then Man United being in the same position again next summer, having paid close to, £5 million in wages. So I think it's a case right now of trying to minimise the losses with regard to Manchester United. It isn't the ideal scenario. They would have wanted to try and get money for Anthony Martial in this January transfer window because it is the last opportunity that they can do that. If they can't do that, he will stay at the club for the next 6 months. And in a way, looking at it on the one small positive, potentially, is Anthony Martial may look at this as maybe a 6-month audition for the summer. So if he performs well for Manchester United in the next 6 months, he could get a good move in the summer. And if he performs well for Manchester United when he's selected in the next 6 months, that's going to be good for Manchester United and Erik ten Hag. Look, United have tried to sell him before, and they tried that tactic whereby they will let him go on loan to another club and see if he can perform well there, come back, and then his market value would go up. They tried it at the end of the 2021-2022 season. He went to Sevilla and it didn't work out. 12 appearances for Sevilla in that 6-month loan and he scored just 1 goal. And there's also been talk in the past that Manchester United haven't really gone into the market to try and sell Martial, almost because of a fear that he would go away from Manchester United and be the player that they hoped he would be. But it's got to the point now where it hasn't worked out, and Ineos will have had a say in this as well because they will have been consulted. They want to build for the future now, and it's clear that Anthony Martial isn't part of that long-term future. So let's just cut the losses now, wait until the summer if that's what he's going to do, and then we start again.
We showed the promise of Martial, the talent of Martial. Is it a shame that it hasn't worked out really, Mark?
Yeah, I think almost Anthony Martial is symbolic of all the things that have gone wrong with Manchester United's recruitment over the last 5 to 10 years. There's been so much promise for so many players that have gone to Old Trafford, but just never quite delivered at the very highest level and taken Manchester United back to where they want to go and they believe they can go. He was brought in by Louis van Gaal in the summer of 2015. He was a youngster with raw pace and talent, and they all believed, obviously, that they could get the very best out of him, and you saw flashes of it, but just not enough on a consistent basis. And when you look at Manchester United's recruitment over that time, since Anthony Martial, there's not really been any players that have come in and dislodged him from being the number 9 or the player that they look to for the goals. They've obviously had good seasons out of Marcus Rashford, but other than that, they've constantly been looking to Anthony Martial to rekindle the form that they invested in the beginning. So, yeah, it's a shame that it's not worked out, but he's 28 years old. And like Dharmesh says, he's got a 6-month audition now to try and get himself another move. He's young enough that someone in Europe would invest in him. He had options, as we say, Marseille, Fenerbahce, so there were clubs that were willing to take him under their wing and see if they could get more out of him. But I think this is the start now, really, of a long process for Ineos and Sir Jim Radcliffe. Manchester United are going to spend a long time now establishing the structure, the personnel, the contracts in place, the wages they pay to players. And there's going to be a top-to-bottom review about how they can sort that out and get Manchester United back to where the fans and the new 25% owners believe they belong.
Just picking up on what Mark said about the recruitment in the last 10 years, the recruitment of Anthony Martial in itself wasn't a reflection of bad recruitment by Manchester United because he was a young player. There were a lot of clubs who were after him, and it was seen almost as a coup that United had signed him. It's what's happened since then with Martial in how he's performed and what they've done with his contract situation. That's been the problem, which has resulted that after nearly 10 years at the club, we're talking about his 9th season, I think now. 2015, you said he joined. It's now 2024. And we're getting a situation now where he hasn't fulfilled his potential, really, and he's going to leave for free if he gets his way in the summer.
He's perhaps a victim of a changing manager as well. Changing manager regularly, changing style, changing philosophy, and perhaps he's just never felt that love from the head coach or the manager to get the very best out of him.
Dharmesh, I'm going to take your Anthony Martial and raise you a Jadon Sancho, because it's pretty similar. What's going on with him?
Yeah, I mean, it's been going on for the best part of a week now, but it looks like it is very, very close, and I've said that before, but timescale-wise, we think 24 to 48 hours before Jadon Sancho makes his return from Manchester United to Borussia Dortmund on a straight 6-month loan. The loan fee has been agreed. The salary apportion has been agreed, which implies that Manchester United will be helping out Borussia Dortmund with some of those wages. And it's just the final contractual details, the dotting of the I's and the crossing of the T's before Jadon Sancho is officially presented as a Borussia Dortmund player. From the outset, look, £73 million worth of investment, it hasn't worked. But again, Manchester United are trying to get themselves in a position where if and when he does leave permanently from United, they can recoup some of that £73 million. And the way they're doing it is a 6-month loan at a place he's performed well before, under a manager he's performed well for before. And if he can do that again for the next 6 months, he will come back to United with 2 years left on his contract. United having the option of a further year. He'll still be in his early 20s as well. And maybe then his market value will go up. And cynically as well, we're seeing a situation, Mark mentioned it before, about Ineos looking across the whole of the football operations at the football club. Not only will they look at the recruitment and the sporting director situation, not only will they look at the players that are currently at the club, but they will look at the coaching staff and the manager as well. He will be assessed come the end of the season. Gary Neville called it a 6-month audition. We're talking about Martial.
But absolutely.
A 6-month audition. So is there a possibility that Jadon Sancho comes back to a very different Manchester United to the one that he left?
Because if he goes away, plays for Borussia Dortmund and performs well, that's an indictment on what's going on at Manchester United, surely.
Not necessarily, no.
Well, if they can't get the best out of him, then they need to get someone who can.
There have been a couple of managers who haven't been able to do that. He just hasn't done it. There's been so many issues surrounding Jadon Sancho. And it's not just been at Manchester United. There's been talk at Borussia Dortmund as well, and with England too. Of course, you want a manager who's going to be able to bring the best out of him. And in fairness to Erik ten Hag, when Jadon Sancho was suffering from a few mental issues, he gave him a break. He sent him away to the Netherlands to say, you go and train on your own and then come back. So he's given him those opportunities. And I think this was almost a last resort, what happened at the beginning of September after that Arsenal game, because maybe Erik ten Hag was thinking, well, we've tried this and it hasn't worked. We've tried this and it hasn't worked. Let's try this. The only issue with that was the timing of it all. 2 days after a transfer window had closed, and you point at the point of no reconciliation with a player with 4 months to go before a transfer window opens. So he's been sitting there away from the first team, eating his food away from the first team, nowhere near the first team squad for 4 months. To the point now where he could return to a place where he can perform, where he has performed before. Just a little comparison here. This could be a good move from United, just given what I've mentioned with regard to he's performed at Borussia Dortmund before. Because if you go back a couple of seasons, it was my information when they were trying to loan out Donny van der Beek, they wanted him to go potentially to a European club because they thought if he had a 6-month loan spell at a European club where the football is maybe slightly slower paced and more suited to Donny van der Beek, he could come back after those 6 months and his market value would go up. That didn't work out, and he ended up staying in the Premier League, going to Everton, and it didn't work out. He came back to Manchester United, it didn't work out again, and now he's gone on loan to Eintracht Frankfurt, and the option price is, £25 million less than what Manchester United actually paid Ajax 2 or 3 seasons ago. So I think United, on that point, this is probably the best case scenario on the club that they're sending him to, because he's got every chance to succeed there.
What's your view, Mark? If he goes away and succeeds, is it an indictment on what's going on at Manchester United? If Manchester United can't get him to play, but Borussia Dortmund can?
I think you see it so many times. Footballers are successful at one club, they go into another club, and it doesn't work out. They play for one manager, they don't play for another manager, it doesn't work. And I think that's just, part of football society and the culture within football at the moment. These footballers are not robots. They're human beings. They have emotions and they have feelings and, they have personalities. Sometimes you clash with people in your workplace. That's something you would have seen, obviously, off the back of what's happened between Erik ten Hag and Jadon Sancho. And Erik ten Hag's management style has obviously been very stern. We've seen it with Ronaldo. We've seen it with other players. He's, I guess, old school in a way. He wants to bring some discipline back to Manchester United because there's been reports in the past that it's not been a very, Sir Alex Ferguson-like ship and players have been able to get away with what they want. So therefore, Erik ten Hag has come in with a hard line and said, no, these are the rules you have to stick by. These are the standards I expect in training. And therefore, it's not worked out. I think whatever happens with regards to Jadon Sancho, I don't think either him or Erik ten Hag will be made to look silly. I think it will be one of those situations where it's just this suits both parties. Okay. And I think, honestly, if Erik ten Hag saw Jadon Sancho go to Borussia Dortmund and play well, he'd say, right now, come and get in my team and come and play for Manchester United and do that here. And that's what he'd prefer. But like we said, this is going to be an interesting 6 months for Manchester United because this is probably the biggest revolution of the football side of that club since Sir Alex Ferguson left. And it'll be interesting to see how it develops.
That said, Dharmesh, what are they going to do in this window? A couple more departures, more people going out?
There is the potential for that to happen. Sevilla are in talks with Manchester United over the signing of the midfielder Hannibal Mejbri. Now, it seems that all parties believe that this will probably be the biggest benefit for Hannibal at this stage of his career. They have triggered the 1-year option in his contract, so they've got a little bit of breathing space. He's got 18 months left on his contract. Everton are also thought to have been keeping an eye on Hannibal as well, but as it stands, the most likely destination right now seems to be Sevilla for Hannibal. And again, if he performs well, goes to Sevilla and performs well, he'll come back to Manchester United, then he'll be reassessed again in the summer, or maybe Man United will think, actually, we've got enough midfielders, his market value might have gone up, we can cash in now because he's still under contract. Another player that could be on his way out is Facundo Pellistri. PSV Eindhoven have approached Manchester United over signing him. A little bit more breathing space on this one. Facundo Pellistri's got 18 months left on his contract. United do have that 1-year option on that contract as well. But it's easy to see why United are probably thinking, look, let's try and get these guys game time. Hannibal has only started 4 games in all competitions. Palestri's only started 3 games in all competitions so far this season. And Erik ten Hag has been quick to point out that there are some big names who are making imminent returns from injury. So if their game time was limited when they had injuries, it's going to be further limited when they don't.
Very quickly then, Dharmesh, all of that we've spoken about there, is that going to have any impact on possible incomings at United?
I mean, if you can loan out a few players, then it does free up wages more than anything else. And of course, loan fees may come into play as well. So that might give Manchester United a bit of money to maybe spend and go into the loan market with. We know that maybe the striker is a priority position if they are to go into the market in this transfer window. Eric Choupo-Moting has been offered. That potential deal is under discussion as far as Manchester United are concerned. But there is a chance, even if Anthony Martial was going to leave or stay, and these other players were going to leave or stay, that Manchester United might not go into the market at all. And as we've been talking about, while Ineos look at the whole of the football operations, it looks like more of a clean slate come the summer. And that's when clubs do the majority of their business. Maybe they might just go into the loan market now just to tide them over until that time.